Di, what underwear do you have on?
Kai, I'm not going to tell you that.
All right. In this episode, we are talking about Mormon garments. We're going to talk about their history, their cultural significance, and if they ever should have been changed. Hi, I am Kai Van Leuven. I spent over 30 years in the Mormon church, and this is what I did after leaving.
And I'm Di Beals. I'm a pastor at Venture Church in Washington, and I'm your friend, and I'm along for the ride.
All right. Well, let's get right into this episode. We are going to be talking about Mormon garments. I have a great graphic for this one, Di.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we are going to be. So, this graphic, for those of you who are listening through our podcast, it shows the original garment, which is full length, right? It goes all the way to your wrists and all the way down to your ankles. The new adapted garment that
Wait,
they've
how
just
long
come
was
up with.
how long was that original one in place for?
I actually have a graphic later on that shows exactly the dates.
Oh, hold on.
The new one that they have suggested, and maybe what the future of garments might look like. I don't know. We'll see.
All right.
That's a little teaser. All right. So let's get into the change. So the church just said that they are doing sleeveless LDS temple garments, and they're coming to the United States. Wow. A new.
Coming from where?
Well, Salt Lake, Di.
Okay. Coming to the U.S. from heaven?
Zion, if you will.
All right.
So what's happening is they have changed the style. And I think it's important to talk about maybe what the styles were. So let's get into this, the evolution of it.
Okay.
The evolution is that it used to be like a full outfit, right? And it's interesting, it even had a collar, which is, I didn't recognize that. And I don't think anyone's ever pointed that out to me.
Okay.
So that's at about 1842. 1842 to 1975, they went to like a full onesie. 1923 to present, they also have a full onesie that's maybe with short sleeves and short, it just goes to your knees. And then it became a 2-part. And then in the near future, they are going sleeveless.
Wow.
All right.
Is this big news? This is a big shocker?
This is big news. And it's big news mostly because of the cultural implications that I think we're going to get into in this episode. And what has also been said about garments. So garments were, as you were instructed in the temple, the garments are supposed to be a protection and a shield to you. They're never supposed to be modified or changed or anything. Like if you, in this 1979 to present, if you were to roll up those sleeves to maybe, meet the standards of what they're doing now, that would be seen as like, well, you're losing all of the benefits of wearing garments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there is no benefit at that point. Even if you remove the top and only wore the bottom, you also are losing the benefits of it. Does that make sense?
So well, I have many questions that I don't know if this is the place to ask them, because I think our listeners probably know, but like what is the purpose of the garments? Maybe just start with that one for me.
Yeah, so the purpose of the garment is where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that one's for you guys at home.
Good job getting that in.
Yeah, where they say it comes from is Adam and Eve, when they were in the Garden of Eden and sinned, God made clothes for them.
Okay.
And these are the clothes that God made for them. They have gone so far as to say that Jesus wore these garments as well.
Okay.
Which I don't know about that one. And I wonder if he had the short sleeve, or I mean, he's in a hotter climate. Okay, he could have been doing that. But this is what I think is actually a really significant quote in this whole story. And this is Joseph Fielding Smith. He is not speaking as a man, as the church likes to say. he gave a quote on garments and how significant they are and how special they are. He said, "The Lord has given unto us garments of the holy priesthood." Come on, we're
Mm.
adding some weight to this. The
Mm.
holy priesthood died.
Yep.
And you know what that means. Okay. And yet there are those of us who mutilate them. So modify
Oh,
them.
okay.
Oh, in order that we may follow the foolish, vain, and permit me to say, well, you can say anything, you're the prophet, indecent practices of the world.
Woof.
I know.
Heavy-handed.
Wow. It is heavy-handed. In order that such people may imitate the fashions. Ooh. They will not hesitate to mutilate used twice,
Mm.
that which should be held by them most sacred of all things in the world. Next to their own virtue. We are adding some.
Wow.
Yeah, here we go.
Wow.
Next to their own purity of life.
Oh, gosh.
Man, I feel like it's just going on and on. They should hold these things that God has given unto them sacred. Ooh, here's the kicker. You're turning in your grave, Joseph F. Smith.
Oh, no.
Unchanged
Mm.
and unaltered. Man, I wish I had a soapbox. From the very pattern in which God gave them. Let us have the moral courage. Oh, so it's a courage thing. To stand against the opinions of fashion.
Mm.
And especially where fashion compels us to break a covenant and so commit a grievous sin.
This is so horrifically incriminating. Oh, my gosh.
This is the prophet of the Lord here. Okay.
Okay, so what happens when you're getting there. They're going to introduce a new style, and how do they undo what has been said here?
They will do it in the same passive aggressive way they introduce everything else.
Okay.
They will introduce it. People will scratch their head and go, "Huh, that's weird." They won't say anything about it. They won't correct anything from the past.
Oh.
And over time, people will just forget.
So stuff that lives in the past that is no longer, I'll use my words, quote unquote, enforced. How do you keep track of the things that don't apply anymore?
Well, that's where the ex-Mormon group comes in.
Oh.
It ain't the church. The church
Okay.
isn't going to come out and be like, well, see how we said this in 1906 for the standing prophet who felt so strongly convicted about this. And we're totally like throwing that off to the side because we want to be more mainstream.
Yeah.
Which is really what is happening here.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can see that there is a absence of material that is coming down the pipe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think my graphic of making some, very skimpy, I wouldn't even call it skimpy. It's called underwear, folks.
Right.
Some pair of underwear that people wear, normally isn't really out of the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't really outside of where the church is probably going to go in the future.
Yeah.
As they adjust to the changing fashions of the world. I don't know. Maybe the church is leading people to sin. I don't know. According to Joseph F. Smith. So I wanted to talk about this really weird idea of something that I never knew until I left the Mormon church. And that was the fact that Joseph Smith was not wearing garments when he died.
Oh.
So Joseph Smith instituted this practice of wearing garments after you go through the temple. A lot of people have associated that with polygamy. So they've said that once you became a polygamist, you started wearing garments. This was symbolic of Joseph Smith, saying, hey, I'm turning away from polygamy now. I think those people are a little bit, I think those quotes are a little bit shaky.
Mhm.
But the idea of the garments being a protection and a shield for people, symbolic of putting on, Christ in your life, all of those things, I think, would have been at the forefront of Joseph Smith's mind. And to hear that he willfully chose, there are many examples of where he is quoted as saying that he willfully chose to not wear garments,
Okay.
I think is a little bit troubling.
And if I understand correctly, you would never be caught without them if you had any say in the matter. If you were
Yeah.
committed to wearing the garments, you keep them on at all times unless you're bathing?
Yeah, so there would be certain times where you wouldn't wear them. So like physical exercise,
Okay.
you wouldn't wear
Or
garments.
swimming?
Swimming, you wouldn't wear them. Um, we'll talk about intimate matters between you and your spouse. You don't need to wear them there. So like all of those kind of exceptions.
Okay.
What's funny is in Utah culture, which I am not, sorry, you guys, I am not in Utah culture. There would be women that would wear like yoga pants and a workout shirt like all day. Like they were always going to the gym so that it
Oh,
was like technically kind
okay.
of okay.
Okay.
Yeah, like sometimes when you think about like in Jesus's time when like people were like so rigid about rules
Yeah.
and they would do all of these like weird things to try to skirt the rules,
Yeah.
and you're kind of like, I could see how a legalist religion would make you do that.
Sure.
Sorry, that was free. So Joseph Smith was not wearing garments when he died, and
Didn't he
this is a
die in prison?
yeah. Well,
Oh,
here
can you wear
we'll get to it. He
Okay.
died in Carthage jail. So
Okay.
Joseph and Hiram, so Joseph and Hiram Smith, they're brothers,
Okay.
and himself were without their robes, meaning garments, in the jail at Carthage, while Dr. Richardson, who's another guy in the room, had his on, but corrected the idea that some had that he had taken them off through fear. I think that's an interesting thing to put on there. Like, oh, he's not
Yeah.
afraid. He's not
Yeah.
afraid. So
Huh.
that's not why he took him off. W. Phelps said that Joseph told him one day about that time that he had laid aside his garments on account of the hot weather.
Hmm.
It's just such a weird quote in so many different ways
It is a very weird quote.
because no like active Mormon, let alone the prophet who believes that it will protect him,
Mhm.
would just be like, yeah, I didn't want to be so hot, so I took them
Yeah.
off,
Yeah.
right? Um, I I have a lot of issues and trouble with this quote. There was a really nasty quote that I could have put in here, but it was you could tell it was so biased that I was like, this is the most non-biased quote I can find about Joseph Smith not wearing garments.
Okay.
So this was given by John Taylor, who was a survivor of the Carthage jail attack. He gave it through I believe Hiram Page, who was a scribe for Joseph Smith. So
Okay.
I didn't put that citation down there, but it is in the show notes if you want to look it up. So I look at this and I say, this is a really weird exception. Like, why is it that if I'm instructed to wear them night and day,
Mhm.
for my whole life, it doesn't matter
Mhm.
about the temperature, it doesn't
Mhm.
matter about hot weather. Why is it that the prophet was not wearing them?
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's worth studying, and I think it's worth looking into of why he decided not to on his last day.
Yeah.
And I could come up with some really nasty, mean quote, but I'm going to leave that to the second prophet of the church.
Okay.
And so this is Brigham Young, and he says he's talking in a special conference, and he's saying, I will deviate from my subject a little and say a few words with regards to Brother Joseph, that some perhaps have not understood. If Joseph Smith Jr., the prophet, had followed the spirit of revelation in him, he never would have gone to Carthage. So he's talking about the prophet being an apostasy and not following
Okay.
what the Lord wants him to do. If you understand that, a great many do and some do not. Joseph said, I can see life and liberty and salvation in that course. So he's talking about fleeing Nauvoo and heading west. But if I return and give myself up, it is to death and darkness to the full. I am like a lamb to the slaughter. This is where that quote comes from for all of you in the church. And never for one moment did he say that he had one particle of light in him after he started back from Montrose, which I'm assuming is a city he was in, to give himself up in Nauvoo. This he did through the persuasions of others. I want you to understand that. So Brigham's hucking Joseph under the bus right here.
Yeah. Give me a basic summary, because that's a lot of stuff that I don't have context for.
Okay. What he's saying is Joseph Smith pretty much turned away from the spirit of revelation.
Okay.
Turned away from his prophetic calling. He was persuaded by bad people. And that's what led him to Carthage jail to be murdered.
Wow.
It's a pretty
That is.
if I said that, people would be like, oh my gosh, Kai, you are this angry ex-Mormon. Instead, I mean, I'll let somebody else throw that out there.
Mm.
And if he were wearing garments, he would have been protected in this.
Mm-hmm.
But because he had left his garments, which really gives more light to the idea that the garments were a symbol of polygamy. So I wanted to just kind of hammer this point home that garments are a requirement for endowed members of the church.
Yeah,
This is
they're for everyone, not just anything to do with polygamy. That they're for everyone.
Everyone in the day. So if you've gone through the temple, you wear them now.
Okay. Even I know that. I got that part.
Okay. So this is the exact question. Do you keep the covenants that you made in the temple, including the temple garment as instructed in the endowment? So the endowment is where you go and you watch a video and you make these promises or covenants with God, and they tell you, you actually already have them on, but they tell you to put them on, and so you kind of symbolically do that. Okay. So I wanted to talk about garment culture because that's kind of the theological side of it, right?
Okay.
Like this is Mormon theology. And then how does garment culture, how is it really negative and harmful to people? And I think we'll see people, like if you grew up in the culture that I did, I grew up watching my parents wear garments, wear them around the house, or wear clothes that conform to it. I watched my brother wear them. I watched other siblings. I was on a mission. I watched other people wear garments. And that was kind of the stamp of approval by the church saying, this person is towing this line.
Yeah.
Right? Well, what it leads you to do is it leads you to say, if somebody isn't, there is quite a bit of asking yourself, well, is that person worthy of a temple recommend?
Yeah. How are they living their life? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I always knew there was something off with Kai,
And you have pictures here of a woman whose shoulders you can see, and one of them like shoulders and collarbone. And so you would not be able to see that on somebody wearing garments. Because they would show. So if you can see a woman's shoulders, how is she really living? Is that sort of the vibe? Yeah. What kind of a woman is she? Yep.
Those sinful shoulders.
Sinful shoulders.
So this is actually a picture of my beautiful wife. Oh, she is gorgeous. Before going through the temple, right? In the dress of her choosing. And then this is actually us on our wedding day. So after going through the temple And you can see there is quite the adjustment in doing that.
Yeah.
We had to pay a tailor to continue to add more material to
Mhm.
try to make it to conform to what the church says, people should be wearing, what type of
Right.
underwear they should be wearing.
Right.
And I think there is a lot of judgment that comes not really to men. Okay, like it's a shorts and a t-shirt. Like there's no, I mean, most men don't really have styles that go much beyond that. Not with,
Mhm.
you could wear a tank top or um I don't want to use the term I want to use, a white tank top that
Ribbed.
ribbed tank top that sticks to your body.
Right.
Come on, we don't want to get canceled on this.
No.
Talking about domestic violence. But you can see that my wife had a choice here and she chose to go the church route. But when
Mhm.
it's her own choice, she wore a dress that I'm like, it seems
And
fine
she
enough.
looks spectacular.
And
Yeah.
she looks spectacular. And so I think this really has a implications more with women than it does with men, right?
Yeah. Agree.
And I mean, Di, can you speak to that a little bit? Like, I think
Oh,
that
man.
as
Yeah.
somebody outside of the church, right?
N Well, but inside of a church still. So, I this cultural, I don't wanna go too far off the rails, but I think even the church, Christian church, has struggled over the decades of a woman's responsibility to remain modest so as not to cause a man to quote unquote stumble. So that would be like the Christian way that it has harmed women. I think there's this fear that if I show too much skin, I have now caused someone else to sin. And in there, we had to start asking the question, hey, where does a man have a responsibility for his own thought life and his own choices based thereon? So I think it's really damaging. It causes a lot of insecurity in a different way, as if people or women don't have enough insecurity about their bodies in general usually, but now add on if I show too much skin, I'm sinning. That's super problematic.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to the original quote by Joseph F. Smith, where you're like, there is so much weight and gravity put on people's underwear.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
really what we're talking about. Like we're not talking about
Yep.
their heart. We're not talking about how they treat people. We're not talking about what type of, um, if they're willing to give of their time. We're talking
Yep.
about if they pass a visual inspection
Right.
by men, more than likely, right? If they pass this,
Uh-oh.
well, I'm talking about like a temple recommend interview.
Yep.
You are trying to pass a visual inspection by a man, which
Yeah.
is kind of problematic in and of itself. Um, I just think there is so much harm that can
Mhm.
come from this and from just meddling.
Yeah. Well, the Mormon Church has I mean, I don't wanna say one has caused the other, but where they're different from the Christian church over the decades, I think this is less of a problem now, has said, if you show too much skin, you could cause your brother to stumble. Whereas the Mormon church has said, you must wear these garments in order to prove your what? Holiness or worthiness.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a temple recommend question. So you
That's pretty
cannot
extreme.
enter the house. So, like, if let's play out a scenario here. You love wearing a tank top or short shorts. Okay. And then you have to go in front of your priesthood leadership
Yeah.
and declare if you are worthy enough to enter the house of the Lord. And this is one of the questions that they ask you.
Yes.
I just think it's really It can be really damaging because probably no one does that perfect, especially if you're a female. If you're a man, I mean, yeah, whatever. But if you're a woman, are you doing it? I mean, did you just gently curl up that cap
Right.
sleeve
Right.
to be able to wear that outfit from H&M? I mean, is that what you is that what you did? Because, technically you're modifying that,
Right.
and you're going to lose the protection and the shield, and Satan's going to be on you like crazy, and
Right.
that's why you know yelled at your kids. I mean, it's a really like
Okay. Yeah.
damaging downward spiral that you can find yourself in, um if you modify that. So
Okay, so can you talk to me about in Mormon culture now with this change coming, what's the reaction? Because if I'm especially because I'm a woman, and if I have lived X amount of years following this very carefully, maybe part of me is excited at the new freedom coming, but maybe I'm also really mad because I had to modify my wedding dress and I had to modify my prom dress and, whatever else. I couldn't go, wear a tank top and shorts at the beach or whatever. Do you know much about that reaction?
oh, people are super pissed off.
Okay, okay, okay. I'm not happy about that, but I kind of feel relieved. I think they should be.
Yeah, no, people, and hey, the algorithm finds me as an ex-Mormon. It finds me ex-Mormon stuff. Okay.
Right.
So, I mean, take what I say with a grain of salt,
Yeah.
but I do know that a lot of people are super annoyed and frustrated with this idea because I actually want to draw a huge distinction between maybe what a pastor or a religious leader would have said 70 years ago. And this is,
Mm,
or not 70, in the 70s, like 50 years ago.
'kay.
And this is no disrespect to the Christian church, to the mainstream Christian church. It's still a lot of can be seen as opinion. If a mainstream Christian church pastor said, I think that these women are causing men to stumble,
Mhm.
it is not uh followed with thus saith the Lord. And that's what we're talking about when a prophet speaks. It is the Lord is telling you
Yeah.
this is what you need to wear.
Yeah.
There is a big difference between someone who runs a church or even a huge organization saying, we feel that you're causing men to stumble. And
Yeah.
the Lord is telling you, if you modify this, no modifications at all, like you will lose the protection, you will lose the shield that helps you with. There, to me, there's a big difference. I'm not trying to be offensive,
Yeah.
but I'm just trying to say, like, the gravity of this is pretty harmful to people when
Yeah.
they think about, well, I did modify it and here I am. And what does that mean? And they have to wrestle with that. There is no answer. There is no like penance. Like, well, now you have to wear a muumuu for whatever for for a week and you are totally back in the right with there is none of that. So
Yeah.
people, let's say you took off your shirt because you were hot. Hey, going back to Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
Let's say you took off your shirt while you were hot, uh, using a chainsaw in your yard, and it cut off your arm. Right? Like, think about how you wrestle with that. Of like, well, this is because I didn't have God's protection, and you
Right.
would gaslight yourself and say, "Oh my gosh, I am like," and I just think
I
that is
deserved
so
this. It
I
becomes I
deserve
deserved it.
this.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that that is really, really harmful.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't agree with that at all, and I think it can lead people to gaslight themselves, to doubt themselves, and to just find themselves really in a really problematic mental, state.
Yeah.
I'll give a story about this. When I
Okay.
left the church,
Yep, I was gonna ask, because you've mentioned this before, that how hard it was for you to give up the garments. So, yeah, talk about it.
Yeah, and I think that has to do with holding on to some of your old spiritual life, right? Like, you don't know what's gonna happen when you take them off and you go drive your car for the first time, are you gonna get T-boned and die?
Right.
Like,
Wow.
and that's really what we're talking about here, like, and so to take them off, I wore them mostly culturally, but I think this is important to point out to a lot of ex-Mormons. You still hold on to some of the theology
Yeah.
that you grew up with and that you are familiar with.
Yeah.
Um, and so I remember not being like, oh, well, if it doesn't matter, maybe I should continue to wear them. And I mean, this went on for like months. And I had a conversation with my wife about it. I was like, I just don't know what to do. Um, and like I said, it's not a tall ask for a
Mhm.
guy. It's
Mhm.
just not. I'm wearing a white shirt right now.
Yeah.
It's not a tall ask. And so I remember when I finally did take them off, I was like, "Oh, this is so uncomfortable. I've been wearing a t-shirt forever and shorts forever." Like it
Mhm.
was and now it's, it's whatever. It's totally fine. I have not chopped off my arm. I have both arms with a chainsaw or some other crazy thing. But I it's hard for me because I don't really have this female perspective, which I do believe that this hurts women
Yeah.
much more than it hurts men.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for women and girls who grew up in the church, who felt like they always kind of had to cover up, who had to, oh, your uncle's coming over, you're in, little
Right.
girl clothes, you need to go throw some. It's like, well, your uncle probably needs to like
Yeah.
check
Right.
himself,
Right.
or you shouldn't invite that uncle over.
It's
um
very shameful. It makes your body, uh, something shameful. Your shoulders are shameful, your collarbone is shameful, let alone anything else, and I just have so many questions, like, how does that ever translate to a healthy marriage even if everything about you is shameful? It just has a lot of extenuating problems.
yeah, and I think those exist. There's oh my gosh, I'm forgetting her name. Kind of a famous ex-Mormon who got excommunicated from the church. Who like that's her whole job is she's like a dealing with sexual problems
Mm,
within Helfert. You guys are gonna have to kill me in the comments below. Um, who that's her whole deal is like, yeah, all of you, I would assume a lot of women, but probably men too. Like it's a very heavy shame on masturbation, and I'll edit myself corn if you know what I'm talking about. And that that along with women shaming their virtue, and is this holy and is this virtuous, those two things kind of together, you have two people that are kind of been told like this is all dirty and nasty
yeah,
your whole
exactly.
life,
Yeah.
and then woo, take off all your clothes
You're
and
right,
be
yeah.
close it's like,
No rules, go for it. Yeah.
yeah. Well, there are rules. That's the
Well,
next
okay.
episode, die.
Okay, alright.
So but I do think that it's really a odd concept that shame, 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 and then go for it, and this is supposed to be healthy,
Yeah.
and we're never going to talk about it again after you get
Yep,
married.
yep.
So anyways, I just wanted to talk about that, but Di, we have a question.
'Kay.
It's a very important question. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I hope. Think so.
Di,
Oh,
what underwear, according to you, makes me worthy?
there is no underwear that makes you worthy. In fact, nothing you wear makes you worthy or unworthy. That's
Okay.
just silly.
Are you
Is
sure?
is
I
that
feel like
actually how it would be worded in the Church of Latter-day Saints?
well, I have the exact wording.
Okay.
Do you wear the temple garment as instructed in the temple? Okay.
Okay.
But it is a worthiness interview
Okay.
to be able to enter the house of the Lord. So it's if you say no,
Why is the church asking about underwear at all? Why?
oh, Di, you are cutting right to the chase here.
Yeah.
Why are they meddling in
Yeah.
this subject? No one knows. I don't want to use the C word. I don't. I try. If you listen to this podcast, I don't like saying CULT.
Mm.
but they're controlling what you wear
Yeah.
as your underwear and saying it's tied to your relationship with God.
And
Uh,
it's a guilt method, which then makes it more powerful. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. All right. Well,
So this is
Di,
it sounds like this is the to be continued, because now how do we take a young man and a young woman, let's say, who have passed a worthiness interview and have tried to remain pure, quote unquote, and now are going to wear their garments and go get married. And that now what do we do?
yeah, and I think it's more. I think there are so many negative consequences of this
Yeah.
that it's just like, why meddle?
Yeah.
Like, why be involved in this?
Yeah.
And I think it's I that's kind of what the mainstream Christian church is not going to delve into this. Number one, it's not important.
Mhm.
It's just not. Number two, it doesn't connect you to God at all.
Nope.
Like,
There's not any fabric that's more holy, right.
and number three, it makes the people around you super judgmental and hurts the
True.
culture of your church.
And all you do is struggle with shame.
Yeah, internal shame and internal guilt. And I just don't think that's like what helping people, healing people,
No.
helping them understand their relationship to God and be healed by Jesus. I just don't think that's what it's about.
Agreed.
So, with that, the worst promoter in the world, if you like this episode,
Yeah.
please share, like, subscribe. Neither Di
Send
and
us
I
your questions,
send us your
your
questions.
thoughts, your
Yeah.
frustrations.
Yeah, if this is something that really is harmful to you or was harmful to you,
Yeah.
and you just need to like let it out, send us something private. We would love to talk with you through that. If it's a female question,
Yep.
Di will take it head on.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's important to talk about that. Di and I, neither one of us are like, oh, we need 1 million subscribers, but we do want to be effective. So
Yeah.
if you subscribe to this channel or like it or share it, that helps us be more effective, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Di, do you have any final comments on, as you evangelicals always call it, magic Mormon underwear?
Oh, I didn't say that, you did.
Okay.
I try to be respectful. I just think we probably have a lot of listeners who have had to wrestle their way through this or wrestle their way out of wearing the garments, and I don't wanna add more shame to the mix. You probably carried on that practice because you genuinely thought that it protected you and brought you closer to God. So, I'm gonna go with the benefit of the doubt that these are a lot of good people trying their best to follow the rules and be close to God, and that this is just not the way to do it.
Beautiful. Well, with that, we will end our episode. But yeah, love you guys. And until next time.
Yep.